Okay. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, depending on where you are. My name is Yoav from HealthIL, and I'm very excited to share with you this special session as part of the HealthIL week with our guests from the VA, specifically the immersive care team, talking about defining new reality in healthcare for veterans. I'm really excited to have two exceptional guests join us. Um, and Caitlin, just a bit about housekeeping. You're welcome to send questions over the course of the session. We'll have time for Q&A at the end. Just please do the questions to me personally, meaning, ping me in the chat directly with your question. I will compile them for Ann and Caitlin over the course of the session, and then at the end, we'll get to them. So the last thing is that I'm sharing with you here the contact to Ann and Caitlin at the end. You're welcome to reach out to them with whatever follow-up you have. You can also reach out to me personally, and I will connect you as well. That would be great. So without further ado, and Caitlin, I invite you to join us. I've made you both hosts. You're welcome to share your screen. I will stop sharing mine. And we would love to hear from both of you about everything you are doing at the VA. So thank you very much, and take it away.
Great. Thank you so much for having us. Caitlin's going to be sharing the slides, so you'll have to endure a little bit of next slide as we get this started, but grateful to be here with you all today and looking forward to a good conversation. You can go to the next slide, Caitlin. One of the things that we always want to emphasize is that the success of VA Immersive is team-based. This is a team sport and it's an endurance sport. So I have the honor of co-presenting with Caitlin today as VA Immersive Program Manager. We also have Caitlin, we're also joined by Evan Davis, who is a recreation therapist by training. He helps with project management. And then Jared Riceweber, who is a psychologist and works on implementation. What's important about all of us that we like to emphasize is that we're all clinicians. We've all grown up in medical centers and now get the opportunity and the privilege to do this work. Okay, next slide. The other thing that we like to emphasize is that we don't endorse or approve any particular companies. So you'll hear some company names and see different things that you may recognize, but there is no particular singular company or group that we prefer or work with. Also want to emphasize that the way that we're using immersive technology across VA is absolutely as a support tool. We're not replacing clinicians, particularly in mental health, as we talk about these different kinds of things. This is supplemental care. And was on a call last week with one of our executives who said, and I think very brilliantly so, that we have to get beyond thinking about mental health care only in the treatment space and think specifically into the support and care space. And that's certainly where we think there's unique opportunity with this technology. Okay. A few things about the Veterans Health Administration. If you're not familiar, we're the largest integrated safety net healthcare system in the United States. We have 9 million enrolled veterans, 172 medical centers, and almost 1,200 sites of care. So those would be residential living facilities, outpatient clinics, vet centers, things like that. We're also the largest provider of graduate medical education, which is important when we think about implementation of emerging technology, specifically immersive technology, because it means that roughly 70% of trainees will rotate through the VA at some point and therefore have the opportunity to experience this technology being utilized in actual clinical care. Also contribute significantly to medical and scientific research. We have a host of staff, over 400,000 now, and 25,000 volunteers. So large, complex organization. You can go to the next slide. But importantly, we have innovation in our DNA. So if you think about some of the things that are just normal in healthcare these days, as much as anything can be, implantable cardiac pacemakers, liver transplants, powered ankle foot prosthetics. Also recently in the last 5 years, a compassionate use authorization for a 3D printed hearing device. It's called the GeoStent. If any of you want to look that up, it's a really interesting and exciting story about a veteran who had a problem and an engineer and a clinician who saw an opportunity to solve it using 3D printing. And then the veteran had the opportunity to name the device, named it after his grandson. So they call it the GeoStent. And also currently we have the privilege, opportunity, and responsibility to be the leader in clinical implementation of immersive technology like virtual reality, which we'll talk about more today. We want to level set on some of the terminology, immersive technology being the most inclusive term. Anywhere you go in the space these days, you might get a little bit of a different answer about what immersive tech means, what XR means. And so we want to be as inclusive as possible, but also narrow down to be specific in areas where it makes sense. So immersive technology, most inclusive. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're using a headset. It could be other peripheral devices that help you feel like you're somewhere different than you physically are. But as we start to talk about extended reality or XR, that's when we're talking about in a headset where you become psychologically present if you're completely immersed in a different environment. Least immersive of the XR technologies would be augmented reality, where you have a digital overlay, and most immersive being virtual reality, where you're completely virtually enclosed in that space. In the last 6 months, of course, we've seen devices come out that more seamlessly pass between the two, augmented and virtual reality. That's where you see your mixed reality devices are sometimes called spatial computing devices, but certainly progressively immersive as we think from left to right here with augmented to virtual. Okay. And you can see here an example of the two extremes. So on the right is augmented reality, where you can see that this person is on their outdoor porch. Looks like a beautiful setting. They're also interacting with that virtual environment, but they can see the physical world around them. Same exact experience on your left. This is a virtual reality version where they're completely immersed in that virtual environment. Okay. Videos always add a layer of complexity to presentations. So we hope they all work for you today. We've got some exciting ones. You can go to the next slide, Caitlin. So the part of the story of how this has evolved over the last 7 years, and certainly we're excited to share our story as often as we can because we don't want people to start today where we were 7 years ago. Caitlin was a bedside nurse at the VA in Asheville, North Carolina, and I was a pharmacy practitioner and innovation specialist. Caitlin saw an opportunity to address a problem of postoperative knee pain and anxiety using this technology, and quickly saw benefit, decreased opioid use, decreased length of stay, things like that. She'll share a little bit more of that data, but also in the process reached out to see if other VAs were using the technology. And at the time, no one said they were. I was also aware of a growing group of people around 3D printing. So we had a 3D printing network that was growing to build collaboration in that particular space. So the two of us came together to go deep on the nuts and bolts of how do you implement, test, evaluate, replicate, scale this technology, and also how do you build and convene a community around it so that people aren't learning the same lessons over and over again, experiencing the same challenges or failures. We want to come together and help this move forward because we believe there's meaningful impact. So you can go to the next slide. Because of that community, we now have headsets in all 50 states and some American territories, Guam, American Samoa, Puerto Rico, which is exciting because we've also documented more than 40 indications of use. So while 7 years ago, we had 5 or 6 uses at 5 or 6 medical centers, now more than 40 different indications are being used in clinical practice across the entire country. Okay. These are some of the examples of use. One of the things we get excited about is the fact that none of these are stock photos. What you're seeing are our actual patients and providers using this technology. This is not an exhaustive list, but it gives you an idea of some of the places where we're seeing some real benefit. Some of these are clinical settings and others are related to training and education or employee or staff or veteran well-being. But what we appreciate about this technology is the versatility. One device can help in this wide variety of indications. Okay. What we also see is that it's a convening technology. Not only are we able to put a diverse span of experiences addressing a wide variety of clinical indications onto a single device, we're also seeing people who don't historically or traditionally or necessarily cross paths or work together come together around this technology, which has been a really exciting part of the community. We have clinical subject matter experts, non-clinical subject matter experts. So not only do we need our clinicians, we need our engineers, we need our coordinators, our veteran experience officers, our innovators. We also need our researchers. We need the people who will go deep on building that evidence and expanding knowledge in that space. And then we need the expertise in how do you train, educate, and how do you leverage this for simulation. And what we're seeing with this particular technology is all these people are coming together in a common space to move this field forward. Okay. Now, one of the things people ask is why immersive technology? Why virtual reality? Well, what we know is that bigger picture, right? Projected growth from 2020, $2.7 billion to $41 billion in 2026. That's significant growth, and that's healthcare specifically. Then also for us, as I'm sure many of you can appreciate, we get our patients from the Department of Defense. We serve veterans, former active duty service members. And so we're seeing increasingly that the Department of Defense is leveraging this technology as a training tool as well, which means by the time we get veterans as patients, this technology is native. Not only that, but we certainly see significant adoption in younger generations. So as they rise into the healthcare system, whether it be VA or not, this technology will just be a part of their normal everyday life. So how much better to incorporate into their healthcare to encourage engagement and improve outcomes. We also know from a training perspective that you can learn faster, more confidently, and you feel more emotionally connected. We've certainly seen that in some of the development that we've done with prevention of sexual harassment content and those types of things where it's a different way to learn and important to think about what things are best to learn in this environment. Okay. We also have done a literature review. So this continues to grow and evolve because we know people often ask about the evidence. There's actually decades of evidence to support use of this technology in healthcare specifically, and opportunities to expand and grow that evidence. And certainly we want to contribute to that as well. We make this literature publicly available. If you're interested, you can get it from our website. Also, we're happy to share. And these indications initially began as just 4. How do we use it in healthcare? How do we use it for physical rehabilitation, mental health, and peer support? And then as people ask us more about particular indications or areas of use, we've been able to add those. What we've seen are themes. The benefits you could appreciate maybe quickly, user engagement, some cost savings depending on the devices you're using and your approach to implementation. But the important thing that we've seen in this evaluation is the barriers. Access to technology, limited training and education available, and ease of design. And I think you'll see as we work through this, those have really become some of our central areas of focus so that going forward, if as other barriers arise, we will have addressed these and continue to drive forward in the implementation. Okay. With that, I believe I'm handing it to Caitlin.
I believe so, if I can get it to move. There we go. Hello, everyone. So I wanted to show this slide. These are some early patient outcomes, and this is actually from the original pilot that I started at this point 7 years ago. And this just highlights some of those early positive patient outcomes. And you can even see the very first patient I used virtual reality with there in the images on this slide, an 84-year-old gentleman who just had a total knee arthroplasty. Who had significant issues with pain management and using virtual reality felt the first pain relief he'd had since surgery, which then, of course, can increase his likelihood to actually get up and move in the way that he needs to in order to prepare for discharge. And so even those very much older patients are very open to the technology, and this highlights that. So this is just one example, of course, and the data collection from this was just a voluntary anonymous survey, just collecting information on a Likert scale. So very simplistic, but also still very much showing positive impact for those initial patients that I was piloting this technology with. And then I wanted to show you this slide because this shows and emphasizes that even at that single site, technology is expanded to many other patient areas beyond just that single postoperative ward. You see that list there on the right-hand side. And it also shows that there have been sustained positive outcomes related to the use of this technology for indications even moving beyond just pain and anxiety management. But you can see a lot of that data on the slide here, how it was impacting pain. We use our Defense and Veterans Pain Rating Scale, which is a 0 to 10 scale that also incorporates facial expressions and other descriptors of the pain that they might be experiencing. So you can see how that was decreasing, 1 to 2 point decrease, 3+ point decrease on that scale. The anxiety levels, looking at specifically the state trait anxiety inventory scale, the 5-question short form. So you're seeing 84% with a reduction in anxiety. And you can see the N over here. So these are not small N's. These are sustained positive outcomes across all of these different indications. So from that early work, I did publish some of that early work about use with pain and anxiety management. And there's some good data in this manuscript, of course, but I wanted to call attention to the qualitative analysis of the data. So as part of this work, we also capture what we like to call voice of the veteran comments. So they're candid remarks about their experience using immersive technology. And then we put all of those comments into themes. And one of those themes was that virtual reality had the ability to open their minds to other non-pharmacological modalities that may be helpful for a multitude of different indications. So it was actually decreasing the barrier to entry for other different, interventions, modalities that might benefit them in their care. I also wanted to call attention to this article. Anne and I had the opportunity to speak with the Wall Street Journal about how immersive technology is or may be used in the future for mental health care. And Anne provided the revelation during that interview with the Wall Street Journal that it is, of course, much easier to multiply headsets than mental health providers. So meaning the technology provides a means of augmenting the limited number of mental health providers as a supportive supplement to face-to-face care. So extended reality for mental health, it's of course a tool, and it's meant to be a supportive tool, supporting the work that we're already doing for mental health care. And it helps to increase access to and the availability of already evidence-based modalities. So whether that's cognitive behavioral therapy, could be mindfulness, it could be other psychodynamic therapies. As I mentioned, it's helping to augment the number of providers that we have in that space. And also we have a number of VA clinicians investigating the use of this technology to provide care and education with veterans that have PTSD, substance use disorder, anxiety, depression, and I'll give a few examples of those, as well as, of course, different types of exposure therapies. So whether that's in vivo or imaginal prolonged exposure therapy. And it can also, of course, just be used for general well-being. And that might be helpful to support different symptoms they may have related to mental health diagnoses or pain management or just quality of life. And this is a fantastic quote that was in an article that came out about a veteran's use of a platform specifically for creative arts therapy. And you can see the painting actually occurring there. So actually creating artwork in virtual reality that with that particular platform, we're able to actually print out what the veteran creates in virtual reality, and they can take that home with them as a memento of that experience. This describes one of our current national implementation pilots. We call it the Virtual Reality for Chronic Pain and Suicide Prevention pilot. It is a 60-site pilot that involved the distribution of 300 headsets across the country. And this is kind of a phased approach. So part of this is using pre-existing content from the company that includes mindfulness and relaxation content to improve both the veteran's physical and mental health, focusing, of course, on chronic pain, functional limitations, depression, symptoms of PTSD, anxiety. And then the other part of this collaboration with the company is to actually co-design and develop new VA-specific content that includes new content for relaxation, mindful-based practices, as well as new in vivo exposure therapy environments, which allows the clinician to actually place the veteran into those public settings. So whether that's a restaurant or a grocery store or a really large gathering where they might be experiencing different triggers related to PTSD and other phobia-related disorders. So the content allows them to gradually be exposed to an increasing amount of those stressors so that they're better able to navigate civilian life. And so this could be helpful not only for veteran populations, but also for those that have different social phobias, aren't able to be in public spaces easily. And so that is being co-developed with different groups of VA clinicians. So we're excited about that content. Another bit of our work is developing content for different training or other content. And one of those is the firearm safe handling virtual reality experience, which is really intending to increase VA healthcare clinician and other employees' familiarity with firearms, so allowing them to better support veterans when in crisis. And this was one of the first virtual reality-based training applications developed in the VA specifically for VA staff. And this shows you some examples of what that looks like. But it allows them to actually practice in virtual reality safely handling and locking and storing a firearm. Many people aren't necessarily comfortable with holding firearms if they have not been, if they didn't grow up with that, they have not been around it. So many of our clinicians might pass out locks for weapons, but they never even really knew how to lock a weapon. So it makes it harder for them to explain that to others. So this tool allows us to do so in a very safe, even non-judgmental environment. Another one of our current pilots is looking at the use of immersive technology for severe social avoidance related to serious mental illness. So it actually delivers automated, immersive, and validated cognitive behavioral therapy treatments for that severe avoidance to veterans. So we have a number of sites that will be engaging in this pilot with the company Behavior and a platform called Game Change. And this was actually one of the winners of our suicide prevention challenge, a very large multi-million-dollar suicide prevention challenge. We also have multiple platforms that are being used for substance use disorder. As you can imagine, with our veteran population, there are a number of veterans that have various comorbidities, whether that's chronic pain, PTSD, anxiety, depression, which can unfortunately lead to substance use disorders of various kinds. We have one clinician at the Richmond, Virginia VA that has actually developed content called Transcending Self-Therapy, which was originally done as an in-person training or treatment with patients, but during the pandemic, they felt a need to transition that treatment to this more technology-based version in virtual reality to increase access during that time period where face-to-face appointments were limited. So he developed TST VR. You see the retreat there, and that has seen a lot of success already. And then we also have a cooperative agreement with another company called Firefly, where we're investigating the use of environments to provide reinforcement of skills that look at mindfulness and other practices to help patients either prepare for substance use disorder treatment or to continue to use it while they are going through treatment. So you can see some images of that there. That platform is also being used for different patient settings in the US in general for ketamine therapy for severe depression and treatment-resistant depression, which we've also seen that in the VA. So we have one nurse who has been using virtual reality in a neuromodulation clinic, using virtual reality both pre and post esketamine infusion therapy for treatment-resistant depression, where they're seeing reduced anxiety prior to the infusion. It helps to ground the patient, prepare them for that experience, because of course it can be a very disassociative experience. And then it'll also allows them to more calmly come down out of that experience as well. So we're seeing some really great data coming out of those initial pilots where 12% improvement in mood ratings, 4% decrease in the PHQ-9, and 19% improvement in pain ratings just from the use of virtual reality pre and post esketamine infusion. XR for pain management. This continues to be one of the most common use cases across the VA, and predominantly because veteran populations in the US have a higher incidence of chronic pain than the typical civilian population. And studies have shown, of course, that virtual reality and other immersive technology can help to calm and distract patients, positive distraction, helping to relieve both the sensation and severity of pain, of course, by helping to interrupt that pain signal. If you're not thinking about your pain, then it helps to decrease the sensation of pain. Virtual reality can also be used, of course, as an innovative tool, just like with mental health, for increasing access to evidence-based modalities. So a lot of those complementary and integrative health type modalities, cognitive behavioral therapy, mindfulness, pain neuroscience education, biofeedback, and other types of those CIH modalities. But all of those together, between the positive distraction and those other modalities, those can also help to decrease blood pressure, decrease pulse, so positively impacting those vital signs, supporting physical rehabilitation, because of course, if we're better treating their pain management or better treating their pain, they're more likely to be able to move. They have less fear of movement, less kinesiophobia. And then, of course, if we're helping to better treat their pain, we're also helping to combat symptoms of depression and anxiety that might be associated or comorbid with their pain diagnosis. So when we think about how XR for pain management works, it really matters what type of pain they might be experiencing. So thinking about, is it chronic pain? Is it acute pain? Is it acute on chronic pain? And you also have to think about that individual's experience of pain. You really need to keep it very much patient-centered, and it has to be an individualized approach. And also looking at those secondary diagnoses that might be related to their pain diagnosis. So we also look at individual preferences. So I have found in working with patients that, for example, our male veterans are more likely to be positively impacted by virtual reality for pain management if it's an interactive environment, more of a gamified approach. It might even be somewhat competitive, something that takes their mind off of their pain and interrupts that pain signal. Whereas with our female veterans, I have found, and this is just candid remarks, of course, but I have found that they are more likely to experience a pain intensity decrease if they're in a more relaxation environment or sedentary environment. And so thinking about those things, and that's just an example related to gender, you need to personalize the approach and allow for that autonomy of environment selection so patients are able to choose the environments that best work for them in positively distracting from their pain, or in choosing different modalities that might be positive, have a positive impact on their pain. So this is just some additional example content category. So I've talked about positive distraction, cognitive behavioral therapy. It might be physical rehabilitation and movement activities, pain neuroscience education, those CIH modalities like mindfulness, biofeedback, as well as skill building. So helping to build skills that can then help them to better self-manage their pain. So some examples of that in practice might be acute pain. So say the patient's in acute pain and they do better with relaxation environments. Well, it might be a deep breathing environment that's using customized breathing treatments to then help to reduce their anxiety, reduce their pain so that they can get up and move again. Or it may be, like I said, it might be a male veteran that deals better with interactive games to help get them to a place where they can better self-manage and better do the activities they need to do for their quality of life or rehabilitation. For chronic pain, it might be a cognitive behavioral therapy program or pain neuroscience education. We've seen a lot of CBT-based programs coming out on the market at this point for chronic pain management, whether at home or in clinic. Or it might be something like very specific pain, like phantom limb pain, where you're using XR-based mirror therapy to aid with that particular type of pain. And then diving into XR for rehabilitation, this is, of course, an ever-growing clinical focus for use of XR at the VA, both in clinic and also now looking at sending devices home with patients as a supplement to their care, where they can continue to use devices independently in between provider appointments. And the benefit of the technology, of course, continuing to advance is that now when we send devices home with patients, the clinician can see remotely how that patient is progressing related to functional outcomes, and can even change home exercise programs remotely based on that progress. So we're seeing use, of course, in physical therapy, occupational therapy, recreation therapy, blind rehab, and creative arts therapy, amongst other use cases within the rehabilitation realm, where it might be for TBI, spinal cord injury patients, post-stroke. So there's a lot of different things you can do with rehabilitation. And with that, I wanted to share a quick video, and hopefully you're able to hear the audio of an older veteran who is talking about his use of XR for rehabilitation. And it may not work, but we can, of course, share with you all the YouTube link. Oh, wait, it might start.
Yeah, I've never really worked with virtual reality, so it's new to me. But I'm enjoying all of it. I really am. And your regular physical therapy, working on balance issues, it's enjoyable, but it's work. This is not work. This is like enjoying playing the game. If it weren't for the VA, I'd be in a wheelchair. No question about that. So as long as the VA will work with me, I'll work. Hopefully one of these days I'll be able to walk without the aid of any kind of walker or anything. And I'm striving toward that.
And it is testimonials like that from our veterans that definitely keep our passions for this high. I mentioned a little bit ago how we collect comments, what we call Voice of the Veteran comments about their experience in immersive technology. And we continue to do that for all of our implementations of this technology. And our VA immersive team is currently leading over 20 of those across the country that encompass 120 different medical centers. So for all of those, we're collecting comments like this. So hundreds and hundreds of comments. And I can promise you that out of all of those, probably 90% of them are almost always just positive comments. And you can see some examples here on this slide. So as we move forward, of course, there are many opportunities in this space. This list is absolutely not all inclusive, but these are some of the things that we're thinking about right now. Continuing to dive into those novel use cases. You see an example there with auditory hallucinations. Sometimes they could impact one patient, sometimes they'll impact thousands, but we continue to explore how this technology might be used to support healthcare. And that list continues to grow and seems limitless. We're also looking at how we can use this technology to better support our patients when they are not directly in our care even. So how can we support them even in their homes through things like peer support, allowing them to have access to technology that allows them to join group sessions in virtual worlds, speaking with other individuals across the world, across the country, sometimes veteran patients in there as well, sometimes not, but it allows them the opportunity to either be anonymous or not anonymous and really talk with other people. So helping with social isolation and peer support. Also, of course, looking at how the technology can equip and augment our clinicians. I mentioned how we can do so with our mental health providers, but it's not just limited to mental health. Even thinking about the physical and occupational therapy example, how we're able to augment care by providing those devices into the home to allow for an increased continuity of care because they have the device, they can use it independently. They may be more apt to actually doing the work of therapy, whether that's physical and occupational therapy or otherwise, because they have access to that type of technology. And then, of course, remote asynchronous or synchronous care to support at-home self-care. It could be life skill development. It could be pain management support, could be for guided rehabilitation, access to different complementary modalities. But I think that space where we're actually going into the patient's home with devices, sending that to them for use. And the technology now even allows the clinicians to connect with their patients in virtual reality remotely. So as the technology continues to improve, I think we're going to see that drive to pushing the technology into the home more and more. And Anne, turning it back to you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Caitlin. So we sort of mentioned and alluded to, we have three primary focuses over the next year that we want to continue to drive toward. One's increasing access to the actual headsets, to the technology, keeping diversity inclusion in mind, because we don't want to unintentionally create inequity in how we think about the deployment of this technology. We want to cross that digital divide and make sure we're mindful of that. We also appreciate the opportunity to standardize training and education, both for our staff and for our veterans. Up to this point, most of the training has been about how do you turn it on, how do you clean it, how do you charge it, those kinds of things. But there's certainly a lot more in the thought process between around how do you facilitate a session, when do you use VR, when do you not, and those types of things are things we're looking forward to developing and standardizing over the next year. And then continuing to build the infrastructure to easily access more and better data, and then make what we learn more visible. Because certainly as we facilitate sessions and have these opportunities, there are things we're seeing, themes where can help guide actual implementation in clinical practice or use for training and education or employee well-being going forward. And we want to make sure that's as available to the broader community as possible. Okay. We also like to make available as many of our resources as possible. Some of the things that have been really helpful to us, if you're looking to build a program around immersive technology in your healthcare systems or in your industries, is community. So we currently have the XR Network. It's a cloud-based collaboration platform where we have now over 2,300 members of VA. I mentioned when we began, 172 medical centers, almost 1,200 sites of care. So people are all over the country. And this is a way where we can bring them all together in one space, and then provide their standard operating procedures, templates, guides. So again, they don't have to start over where we started 7 years ago. And then communities of practice. So we started with one community of practice. That's really where so much of this started to take off, to share lessons learned, knowledge, opportunities, the latest and greatest in research and publications. And what we found is people were really engaged in that community and also wanted to do deeper dives in particular areas. So we partner with some subject matter experts in other areas to also host employee well-being communities of practice, mental health, rehabilitation, pain management. Some of these meet monthly, some bi-monthly, some quarterly, depending on availability of the subject matter experts and the amount of content we want to cover and at what pace. But that's certainly helped to facilitate that community and that conversation, bring awareness and ensure that we're all on the same page about what's happening and where we're going next. And then we appreciate the value of continuing education. We want people to have common knowledge and common language. So we were able to create a XR 101 course. We taught it live last year, but now have made it on demand so people can participate in the course whenever and however they like. And in that time, we're beginning to develop a deeper dive course, XR 201, that we'll make available in parts virtually, and then also in person, because we appreciate the value of actual in-person demonstrations and experiences. Okay. We have these available as well. We certainly have internal versions, but on our webpage, you can find our implementation guide. This is built from our experiences within VA. So everything may not fit, but we've tried to make it as broad of a guide as possible so that you can start to add the context for your particular use. We make that available for download, as well as our intro guide, where we include information, definitions, information about hardware, software. You can see the platforms that are being used in the VA, general description, where they're being used in the healthcare system and how. And then we host veteran experience events because we appreciate that heads and headsets is the best way to get people to appreciate the value here. And so we host veteran experience days where they can demo immersive technology. We do these as well for our staff and make them demonstration and training events. We have those outline event planning guides available as well. Okay, next slide. And then here you can go find those resources. So the innovation.va.gov, we exist within the Office of Healthcare Innovation and Learning, and that is the webpage for our entire office. But there is a page specific to VA Immersive. You can get many of these resources there, the white paper we mentioned, the literature review, and those types of things. The Diffusion Marketplace is really a place to go to find out more about innovation in VA in general. It's best practices across the entire agency. Again, not specifically dedicated to immersive technology, though they've graciously given us sort of a corner of the marketplace, and you can find where some of our frontline staff have actually uploaded some of their own projects and efforts, implementations there, and you can see resources, where they're deployed, and that kind of thing. And then maybe one of our favorites, Caitlin mentioned this earlier as well, we showed the video of the veteran. We have a host of veteran testimonies. We have the messages from our Immersive Summit last year, all available for free on our VA Immersive YouTube channel, and would love for you to go there as well. Okay. And I think that's it. So if we want to take questions, we'll hand it back over to you, and you can let us know how you want to proceed.
Good. So actually, there's a number of questions. I'm going to actually call on the individuals who sent me the questions, and then there's a couple that came in and requested not to be listed out. So I will read off those questions. But I'm going to actually start with Miri. Miri, if you could give us one line on what you do, and then go ahead with your question.
Hi, thanks, Caitlin, and for that really great introduction to the VA and what they do. My name is Mary Berger. I'm CEO of 6 Degrees. We're actually working with the XR team on researching reduction of phantom limping for lower limb amputees using a motion-based technology. And I was actually wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you collaborate with startups and what grants or programs are available for companies in order for them to potentially integrate their technologies into common care in the VA. Big question, but whatever you can address.
Great question. I actually recognize the name of your company. I think you were looking at doing work with VA, or maybe a project got off the ground.
Yeah, we just finished assessment phase and are kicking off hopefully next week.
Okay.
So
Okay, awesome. I thought that was familiar. Yeah, the best way to get off the ground, if it's immersive technology related, is reach out to us, vaimmersive@va.gov. We're happy to take the work that's being done at medical centers, support that medical center if you're already working with one, and help identify opportunities to expand that further. If there are startups here that are not particularly immersive technology based, there's a place to go, pathfinder.va.gov. I'm happy to drop that in the chat. You can submit your ideas, projects, work there, and then find an avenue or opportunity to work with VA if one exists. But if it's immersive technology based, just feel free to reach out to us directly. We're happy to help however we can.
Great, thank you. Shmuel, if you're ready, I would love to have you ask your question. Please give us one line on who you are, and then go for it.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Shmuel Yerushalmi, and I'm a social activist from Israel, social activist including in the field of development healthcare services. And I want to ask you a next question, how you see the future of veteran administration, and another question, what according to you need to do for improvement veteran administrations of poor and low socioeconomic countries in Africa, Latin America, and other places around the world?
Great questions. So the first question, where do we see the future of this in VA? And Caitlin, I'll let you, of course, add to this as well. But I think our ultimate goal is that this becomes normal. We don't believe this is a shiny object. We believe this is something that is truly going to transform healthcare delivery and the healthcare experience. And so we're trying to build the infrastructure for that. Caitlin's done an immense amount of work to do some of the less sexy types of things that make it easier to implement this technology. And then the second question I understood to be, what kind of experiences do we need? I think for us, there are so many experiences out there already, right? And I think for us, what we see as increasingly as important as people working together to improve what exists while we learn what we specifically and uniquely need in this space. We're certainly learning in areas like substance use disorder and addiction recovery and pain management and physical therapy that there are things that exist and they're wonderful. And if they could do X, Y, or Z, that would make them even more meaningful or impactful or unique. And so I think rather than creating more and more new experiences, I think working together to go more deeply on what exists can be really helpful. But Caitlin, please add to that.
Yeah, I think an important thing to note is the best experiences, the best solutions are definitely co-developed with actual healthcare clinicians. So they are the best ones to understand what problems exist in healthcare where immersive technology may best fit. So a lot of our work is around collaborations. So taking what maybe a company has already developed, but then customizing it, iterating upon it to actually become a better solution for healthcare based on both clinician and patient feedback. And a lot of our ideas for what we focus on as well come directly from the front line, where it should be coming from, because they're the ones that are actually living that experience. They are living the problems. So they're the ones that actually best understand it. And then they bring those ideas to us. Hey, this is going on in clinic. This is an issue. Do you think that immersive technology might be a good fit for helping to solve this problem? And that's where a lot of those conversations start.
Great, thank you. I'm going to move on to Elik. If you could give us one line about who you are and go ahead with your two questions.
Hi, Elik from Other Reality, and we're building an empathy management platform, enhancing empathy skills and capacity of, well, basically everyone. And I have two questions. The first one is, well, it relates to what we're doing. If you see using VR technology for enhancing empathy skills and communication skills in different care settings, like patient-provider relationship interaction, as something important and something you need to promote. And the second question deals with the VR itself. So you spoke about implementation, and I was wondering about scaling, because one of the problems of VR today is the scale of it, as the headsets are still very expensive and heavy. That's it. Thanks.
Caitlin, you want to go first?
Well, I was going to say that we absolutely see the technology as being very valuable in helping to build empathy in different ways. And we have already been exploring some use cases and platforms for that particular purpose. So even one of the developments within the VA is an empathy training experience so that clinicians and others that might be involved with the patient's care better understand the patient's experience when discharging from the hospitals, which can be a very confusing and stressful time to hopefully help build empathy and then, of course, help improve the customer experience. And in this case, the customer is our patients. So we absolutely believe in the power of this technology and helping you to literally be in the shoes of different individuals. Same thing with our prevention of sexual harassment training. You are literally in the shoes of a female veteran walking through the medical center, encountering scenarios where sexual harassment is experienced. And so you can better understand the experience of that person because you got to live it. So we absolutely believe in that. And I don't know if you want to add to that piece of it.
No, I think you nailed it. I think empathy is a really powerful training approach, and I think it's uniquely possible with immersive technology, certainly with the psychological presence. For the cost piece, and we can go back and forth about this a little bit, but that's one of the things that we are certainly trying to quantify. VA is a payer and provider, so we're able to take on some of the earlier risk without thinking about the incentive of reimbursement. And also, if you think about some of these devices being consumer devices, are not as expensive as other medical tools. I think the development is still incredibly expensive, and certainly there are headsets that are, significantly more than others. But so much of it is about how you think about the implementation, what you are comparing it to. And then I think also for us, and some of that is our responsibility as well, thinking about the economies of scale and what is a reasonable and sustainable or scalable price for these types of technologies, and what's the benefit to the patient, to the healthcare system, to our clinical staff. All those things I believe need to go into that cost analysis. We're certainly in the early stages of that, but are eager to make those types of things more visible and available to help answer that cost question, Caitlin.
No, I would agree with that too. And I think when it comes to scaling and sustaining immersive technology across a healthcare system, you have to be, really open to different, even pricing or payment models. We've been, for example, most of the work up to relatively recently has been in a clinic or in a facility where it's all contracts going through our logistics teams. And that process looks very different than when we are sending devices home with patients and being purchased through our prosthetics teams and being issued to an individual patient as a medical device. So when we think about even the pricing of those things, it doesn't make sense to have an annual subscription for a device being issued to a patient, where in that situation, it may be more beneficial to think about a pricing model where the clinician can order it for a patient for use for 12 weeks to help supplement their care, and then they return the device. So more of like a rental or a lease. Or if it's a device that the clinician feels that patient would continue to benefit from forever, then you can think about more of a permanent issuance of a device to a single patient. But it doesn't make sense in that at-home scenario to be thinking about how the medical center is going to support an annual subscription over and over and over again for many, many patients. Whereas that annual subscription model might work better when it is being used on station or in a facility. So whenever we're talking to vendors and wherever we're building out resources to help our clinical staff with the market research and to be able to make informed decisions about what products to use, even industry can help us to think about, better models that better support healthcare systems in a meaningful way. So hopefully that made sense, but a little deeper dive into how we think about contracting and purchasing.
Great, thank you. We only have 5 more minutes, so I want to get to the last 2 questions. Noah, you're next. Please give us one line about who you are and ask away.
Hi. So I'm Noah, and I work at the Innovation Center in GEA Mental Health Center. And thank you very much for all for this great presentation, because I feel that we really share the same field and the same clinical needs. So I learned a lot from your presentation. Can you please share again, explain about what you said about the suicide prevention and the social avoidance, and which software you use there or apps and how you use it? Because it wasn't very clear to me, and it's very interesting how to use it in this specific topic. You have those 2 slides about it, about the suicide prevention.
Yeah, the chronic pain and suicide prevention pilot. So that is a project that we are doing with the company Penumbra. And that is the one we are co-developing content with the company. So we have a number of clinical subject matter experts for exposure therapy, for mindfulness, that are contributing to those conversations, the scripting, the imagery, everything. But it's building out new environments for in vivo exposure therapy. So actually putting them into real world scenarios where you can have an increasing amount of stressors, things that might be triggering to their PTSD symptoms, to other phobia related disorders. So for example, if it's a patient that goes into that experience at first, they are sitting in their car, they have to choose whether or not to go into the restaurant. Once they enter the restaurant, you as the provider can select what level of stressors or triggers they might experience. So if they start out at the beginning level, they might be sitting in that restaurant in a booth in the corner. They can see the exit to the building. There aren't a lot of people in the restaurant. Everyone's being friendly. It's pretty calm, you know, but as they continue to go through that experience over time, there's an increasing amount of stressor. So now at the end of it, they might be sitting in the middle of the restaurant. There are people in front of them, behind them, side to side. It's really loud. There's a baby crying. There may be different cultural elements that might be triggering to them. A siren goes by in a car outside. The waitress is not being particularly friendly. So there's like different things that might be triggering to them, and they're being gradually exposed to that. So we have scenarios for that, like grocery store scenes, other large gatherings where they might encounter fireworks or other, you know, loud noises and things that they might be triggered by. So that's what that content development is about. And of course, if we're able to better treat the symptoms of PTSD and other phobias, then we're also hoping to help decrease suicidality and improve suicide prevention. And then, of course, we're using those more mindful-based practices like breathing exercises, sequential muscle relaxation to impact both mental health symptoms as well as support for things like chronic pain. The severe social avoidance is kind of a similar scenario. So rather than focusing on in vivo exposure therapy in general, this one is specifically about agoraphobia and severe social avoidance associated with severe mental illness. And that platform was called Game Change, which has been taken over by the company Behavior, if you have an interest in taking a closer look at that one.
Yes. Great. Thank you.
Okay, Anat, last question. Shawan, you and I will take care of your question offline if that's okay. But Anat, go for it.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the review and for your time. It was very interesting. My name is Anat, and I'm the Innovation Manager of Levinstein Rehabilitation Medical Center, the largest rehabilitation center in Israel. And I have a few questions regarding the rehabilitation issues. First of all, how do you decide which patients are suitable for what service? Like, have you defined an inclusion criteria for the specific services? How you decide on each patient what kind of coverage you receive or what kind of technology is more fitted for each situation? And also, how do you ensure patient safety when we're talking about remote use specifically for physiotherapy or occupational therapy?
Great questions. So when it comes to patient suitability, we do have clinical guidance that we provide to the field about general contraindications and precautions to the use of that technology. And of course, we also leave it very much up to clinical judgment because our clinicians know their patients best, but we do provide those guides to help in those decisions. And so that's something that we share with everybody. It also includes guidance about cyber sickness and when to remove the headset and how to mitigate cyber sickness or other potential side effects from using the technology. All of the on-station or in-facility use, of course, is facilitated by the clinicians. They're not left with the technology, so patient safety isn't as much of an issue. Of course, in the home, it could be. So part of determining patient suitability for an at-home device is making sure that they can safely set up and utilize the device. They may come on station first. They're taught how to set it up, how to navigate the spaces, how to make sure they have a safe environment for it. So all of that is part of determining patient suitability before a device is ever ordered for a patient for home use. And it's obviously worth talking about. So whenever you're thinking about home use for PT and OT, things like that, rehabilitation, it may be that augmented reality is better in that environment because they're still able to see the real world around them, less likely to be up, moving, tripping over things in their home if they can still see the real world. So something to consider too when you start looking at different platforms for rehabilitation in the home.
Okay, and then can perform the exercise by themselves, or do you always like have a clinician that is in control or from remotely, of course?
For remote use, they're doing so independently, and then they also may connect with their clinician remotely at whatever cadence is appropriate. So maybe once a week, they join like a video visit with their provider while using the device. The provider can change the settings in real time, but the rest of the time, the patient is able to use independently as a supplement to their home exercise program.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So, Anne and Caitlin, I'm just going to share again your contact information because everyone wanted to see it. Greatly appreciate your time. This was incredible. We didn't even get to my long list of questions, but I'll send you that offline. And you will receive from us, everyone here, along with everyone who registered, this video, along with the link to the white papers that you wrote about how to implement immersive technologies in healthcare organizations. And thank you again for your time. This was incredible, highly informative, and we greatly appreciate your time spending with us here in Israel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, all as well.
Bye, guys. Have everyone a good weekend.
Thank you.
You too. Bye-bye.